Hello and welcome to the first of hopefully many of these discussion type videos. And basically in these videos I'm going to discuss one topic, one very specific narrow topic with a very broad in-depth discussion about blood DK tanking at a low and high level. So I'm not going to leave anything out because it's quote unquote too advanced. This is going to be everything I know as a high-end raider about the specific topic at hand. It'd be just as if you and me were sitting in a room and you asked me, hey, let me know everything there is to know about blank, and that blank would be the topic of that particular discussion. So it's kind of off the cuff. I'm not on a script at all. I'm just kind of discussing the topic by myself with an invisible person in front of me asking me a question. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Reniat. I'm a theory crafter for the Blood community, as well as a high-end raider currently in Whatever We're Awesome. Their Blood DK tank. I consider myself a raider before a theory crafter, though I do definitely enjoy theory crafting and being a part of the theory crafting community. But anyway, that's who I am. So hopefully you'll find this information useful, as it's information I use to raid at a high level, to be successful in the way that I have. So without further ado, let's go to the first discussion. The topics I pick for these discussions could be anything from Bone Shield, which is the first discussion of today's discussion. Yeah, that makes sense. So the first one is Blood Shield, Bone Shield. The first step is knowing the name, but they could range from anything from death strike timing, cooldown usage, user interface, setting up keybinds, macros, working with healers, working with DPS, anything, and any individual topic, any narrow specific topic can be a discussion topic. Haste as blood, avoidance as blood, mastery as blood, mastery versus stamina, like specific stats, specific builds for specific fights. If there's a fight that is really weird for blood DK, like Garajal, like from tier 14, I would have had a video discussing Garajal, if that were current, which is no longer is. So anyway, that's kind of the format this will follow. It'll be, again, very narrow topic with a very broad discussion about it, so very in-depth. So let's get started with the first one, which is Bone Shield. I'm just going to dive right in. So Bone Shield is what we generally call like a throughput cooldown. It's something we're going to use as often as possible, generally, to get, there are definitely some exceptions which I'll be going through, but we want the highest uptime possible, because that means the highest coverage by your 20% damage reduction. For those of you not aware, Bone Shield, while it charges her up, you have 20% reduced damage taken from all sources, magic or physical, which is fantastic. 20% damage reduction, or any damage reduction, is really, really good. So maximizing Bone Shield as a DK tank involves a couple different things. The baseline of it is you want to have as much uptime as possible, and then there are exceptions around that in order to play it optimally, quote unquote. So the first example of where you wouldn't use it off cooldown is if you have not lost all your charges before you get it back off cooldown. So let's say you use it, you get two charges taken off, and you go to an intermission phase, and you come back a minute later, you have Bone Shield ready to use, but you still have like 6 minus 2 is 4 stacks ready to go. So you're going to wait until those 4 stacks are up. You're going to be paying attention to that, so that you know not to use your Bone Shield until those 4 stacks are used up, so you can get a full another 6 stacks off the next time you use Bone Shield. Because, the amount you gain from having a full Bone Shield use is much more important than the absolute throughput of using it off cooldown, even if you already have them up, because that's not the point. The idea is not to have highest throughput. The idea is to have the best value out of it, which is generally having the highest throughput, but there are exceptions. The second of those exceptions being when there's already cooldown up. Let's get into combat quick. So let's say I'm in combat here. I don't have any Bone Shield stacks. Let's cancel that. And I have Icebound Fortitude up. Oh, look at that, it's up. So I'm taking damage, and it's worth enough to have a cooldown up, but I don't want to stack cooldowns. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for that to go off. It's just, 10-ish seconds. And then once that wears off, then I'm going to use Bone Shield. So I've increased the coverage of those two cooldowns. At the end of the day, at the end of this particular time window, I don't have IBF anymore. That's on cooldown. And I just use Bone Shield. That's on cooldown. But using those two cooldowns separately as opposed to together, I've increased those two uses coverage, which is the most important thing. This is opposed to stacking them together. So it's the difference of having 20-ish seconds where about 12 of those seconds were also doubled with IBF, compared to having 12 seconds of IBF and then 20-ish seconds of Bone Shield. Obviously your Bone Shield duration depends on how fast you lose your charges, but that's the general idea. You want to increase that coverage. So you're not going to use Bone Shield if you already have a cooldown up, just to help increase that coverage. And the final rule of exception for that is if you're saving it for something specific. Let's say you need to have at 3 minutes, or every minute, or say you need to have. Oh, that's a bad example because the cooldown's a minute. So every so often, let's just keep it super generic. Every so often you are going to get hit by this thing, and you want to make sure you have a lot of cooldowns up. But let's say it's magic. So stuff like Dancing Rune Weapon does not affect it. It's super big hits. You want to make sure you have cooldown reduction. So something like hit is taking it and using Death Pack won't work here because you want to, actually mitigate the damage you're taking. So you need to have upfront mitigation, and you can't use Icebound Fortitude. Let's say you can't have a big cooldown like that up for every single one. You'd have to use the little ones. So you're going to map in your Bone Shield rotation into that, or map your Bone Shield into that cooldown rotation to survive. So if that's the case, leading up to that, in the minute preceding that hit that you know is coming, you're going to want to not use your Bone Shield, obviously, just to make sure that you have it up for that hit. Yeah, that's going to hurt your uptime a lot, but you need to have that up then, so that's what you have to do, just to make sure it's up there. If it's more than a minute, you can go ahead and use it, because obviously the cooldown's only a minute. Just pay attention to how long it is until that hit. Make sure you have plenty of, you don't want to be spamming it off cooldown. If it's like 2, 1, and then right before you get Bone Shield back, you're hit by the thing that you're supposed to have it up for. That's not good. You don't want to cut it close. So don't hit it right like a minute exactly before you're supposed to use it, but give yourself a little, a couple seconds of both latency time and just ability to use it ahead of time. So those are kind of the 3 exceptions. To summarize, don't use it if you already have charges up. Don't use it if you already have a cooldown up, and don't use it if you're saving it for something. It seems fairly straightforward, but it's a fairly straightforward ability. I'll go in a lot more detail on a cooldown specific discussion guide in the future. I think it's a really rich topic area. Cooldowns are very, very important in Fluid Decay, so I'll go into more detail as to timing cooldowns in the future. Another thing I want you guys to take away real quick before I take off here is I notice how 2 of the 3 things that I've said for reasons not to quite use Bone Shield just yet has to do with keeping track of something, whether it's keeping track of IBF on you or how many Bone Shield stacks you have left. It's keeping track of something external. So if you haven't yet, and I'll have another discussion topic on this as well to go into a lot more detail, but make sure you're using something to track your cooldowns. It's very, very important as a Blood Decay to know what's going on with your cooldowns at all times, and Bone Shield is no exception. In order to use Bone Shield properly, you need to be using your interface correctly to properly keep track of your cooldowns. Anyway, so that was kind of like the first edition of this discussion, I guess. I'll get better at keeping on track as we do more of these, hopefully. Feel free to send in topic suggestions for things you'd like to see discussed. Remember, these are basically, you could think of these as you sitting down in front of me and asking me, hey, tell me everything there is to know about this topic I'd like to know. So if there's a topic that you'd like to know everything about from like a high rating DK point of view, that's kind of discussion topic I'm looking for. Those are the kind of things I'll be discussing in these discussion guides. Or if you have a good idea for a name, I'm still looking for a name, that'd be great. Discussion guide is kind of boring. It's not a daily because I don't anticipate making these dailies. This is a daily thing. It really depends. I'll probably make these at least once a week. And if they start taking off and I get a whole bunch of requests for different topics, I'll probably do it, quicker. So, I'm not going to drag this video no longer. I've already discussed Bone Shield, and that's something I decided to do. So I will see you in the next discussion.